The rain had been falling since before sunrise, a steady gray curtain that swallowed the horizon. I'd left campus at noon, my old Ford Taurus packed with laundry, textbooks, and the stale smell of dorm life. Thanksgiving break was supposed to be a 5-hour drive home, but by late evening I'd barely made it halfway. The highway narrowed into cracked 2-lane blacktop that wound through empty farmland. Every few miles, the radio fizzled out and the phone lost signal. It was just me, the wipers, and the hiss of rain. When the engine coughed, I thought it was a fluke. Then came a sputter, a shudder, and silence. The dashboard went black. I coasted to the shoulder and sat there staring at the wipers scraping across a dead windshield. I got out, pulled my hoodie tight, and popped the hood. Steam hissed from somewhere deep inside. I didn't know what I was looking for, only that I was stranded miles from anywhere. Then, through the sheets of rain, I saw it, a flicker of neon. The Silver Lantern Motel. It looked like something out of a forgotten postcard. 10 rooms lined in a row, half of them dark, one humming red light buzzing over the office door. I jogged toward it, shoes slapping puddles. Inside, the lobby smelled of old coffee and mildew. Behind the counter sat an elderly man in a brown cardigan. His skin was paper thin, eyes watery but sharp. "Rough night," he said without looking up from his crossword. "Car broke down," I said. "Any rooms left?" He nodded slowly. "Only one still got a light. Room 103. He slid a brass key across the counter. The tag was scratched, the number barely visible. I hesitated. "Just one room working?" "Storm knocked the power out to the rest. Happens sometimes. You'll be fine." I paid in cash, signed the faded ledger, and thanked him. "Third door on the right," he said. "Keep that key safe. Can't make another." The hallway smelled of bleach and damp wood. Half the bulbs were burned out. Room 103's light buzzed like a dying bee. Inside, the walls were off-white, the carpet threadbare, and the air cold enough to bite. I dropped my bag, toweled off, and lay on the bed. The hum of rain was hypnotic. The exhaustion hit fast. Somewhere past midnight, I woke to footsteps. Slow, steady. They paced the hallway, 1, 2, 3, and paused. I held my breath. The steps started again, stopping outside my door. I crept to the peephole. The bulb flickered, casting a single trembling shadow on the opposite wall. Someone stood just beyond view, unmoving. Then came a soft, dragging sound, like something heavy sliding along the carpet. My throat went dry. "Hello?" I called. Nothing. I reached for the room phone and dialed the front desk. Static hissed. Then a voice whispered my name. My own voice. I slammed the receiver down and backed against the wall. The steps stopped. Silence swallowed everything. I sat awake until the first light of dawn. The storm had passed, leaving the parking lot slick and silver. My car still sat on the shoulder a quarter-mile down. The clerk was at the counter again, sipping black coffee. He looked up as if surprised to see me. "Morning," he said. "Sleep all right?" I stared at him. "Someone was walking outside my room last night. I called down here." He frowned. "Phones don't work. Line's been dead since the flood 2 years back." My stomach twisted. "You said the power was out in some rooms. Was anyone else staying here?" He shook his head. "No, sir. Just you." I didn't believe him, but I didn't argue. He gave me directions to a garage 10 miles east and offered to call the tow truck from his personal phone. While he stepped into the office, I wandered the hallway. Room 103's light was still buzzing faintly, but when I turned to check the next door, I froze. The other rooms had padlocks, all of them, heavy iron ones bolted from the outside. When the clerk came back, I asked, "Why are the other rooms locked?" He sighed. "Owner keeps them closed till he can fix the leaks." He paused. "You sure you stayed in 103? "Yeah." He blinked, uneasy. "That one's been closed since before I started here." I laughed nervously. "No, I slept there." He stared like I'd told a bad joke. That door's been sealed for years, can't even open it. Kid went missing in there. Never found. My pulse stuttered. You're messing with me. He didn't smile. Wish I was. He reached under the counter, pulled out an envelope thick with old papers, and slid one across to me. Inside was a yellowed newspaper clipping. Local student vanishes at Silver Lantern Motel. Room 103, scene of investigation. The date was 10 years ago. The photo showed the same hallway, the same flickering light. The name printed beneath the photo. Ryan Hale. My name. I felt lightheaded. That's impossible, I whispered. He rubbed his temples. You sure you didn't dream it, son? I left before he could say more. The mechanic's garage was a low cinder block building surrounded by fields. A man named Eddie wiped his hands on a rag when I walked in. You the kid from the motel? He asked. Yeah, my car's dead. He smirked. That place still open? Thought they condemned it. It's half open, I said. He sent his guy to tow the Taurus and offered me coffee while I waited. The warmth helped, but I couldn't shake the memory of that voice whispering through the phone. Something happened last night? Eddie asked, noticing my shaking hands. Just weird noises, I said. He nodded slowly. Old motels like that, sound travels. You probably heard the pipes or your own echo. Maybe he was right. Maybe exhaustion had twisted everything. I'd been driving for hours, running on bad gas station food and caffeine. By the afternoon, the tow truck returned. The driver looked uneasy. You sure you left that car locked? He asked. Yeah. Why? Door was open when we found it. Keys still in the ignition. I frowned. That's not possible. He shrugged. Maybe the wind. That night I stayed in a cheap motel near the garage. Clean sheets, working TV, bright lights. Safe. But when I turned off the lamp, I heard faint footsteps in the hallway. Slow. Steady. I opened the door. Nothing. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Don't check out of 103 yet. I should have ignored it. Instead, I drove back. The Silver Lantern sat half hidden behind fog, its sign flickering like a dying heartbeat. The clerk wasn't there. The lobby was dark. I walked down the hall. Every door was padlocked, except 103. The light above it glowed steady now, humming softly. The key I still carried slid into the lock like it belonged. Inside, the air was colder than before. My bag sat on the chair, untouched, as if I'd never left. I whispered, "This isn't real." From the nightstand, the phone rang. I picked it up. "Ryan," my voice said on the other end, calm, familiar. "You shouldn't have left." "Who are you?" "I'm what's left of you." The connection clicked off. The light flickered once, twice, then died. The reflection in the dark TV screen wasn't me. It was the same face, 10 years older, eyes hollow. I backed toward the door, but the knob wouldn't turn. My chest tightened. The footsteps started again in the hall. When I came to, the rain had stopped. The door stood open. Outside, dawn painted the sky pink. The motel looked smaller, emptier. The sign no longer worked. I found the clerk sitting in a chair by the office, newspaper folded on his lap. His eyes were open but glassy. "Sir?" I said. He didn't move. The paper in his hand was dated a decade earlier, the same headline about my disappearance. Something inside me broke. I walked to the road, heart pounding. A car passed, a young man driving, face pale and frightened. I tried to wave, but he didn't see me. He looked just like I had. I turned back toward the motel. The Silver Lantern stood silent, half vanished in the fog. Maybe I'd never left that room. Maybe the night I thought I'd checked in was the night I'd been found or lost for good. All I know is that every time it rains and I drive a lonely highway, I see a flicker of neon in the distance. The Silver Lantern still waits for someone to stop, someone who's tired, someone alone. And I hear my voice whisper from the dark, "Room 103 still got a light." Loneliness can turn silence into ghosts. When we drift too far inside our own minds, chasing comfort in isolation, we risk losing the line between what's real and what's imagined. The silver lantern reminds us to reach out before the darkness answers back. They say you get used to silence when you work nights, but that's a lie. Silence only gets heavier the longer you sit in it. I'd been a night shift security guard at the Crescent Motel for 6 months, and the quiet still got under my skin. The place used to be a decent stopover for truckers and out-of-towners, but it had been dying for years. Now it was half abandoned, 3 guests if we were lucky, maybe a stray raccoon in the dumpster out back. I was 34, divorced, and renting a 1-bedroom across from a gas station that closed early. The job paid the bills and kept me busy enough not to think too hard. The motel owner, Mr. Raymond Heller, had passed away 2 years earlier, leaving the property to his daughter who lived in Florida and didn't care enough to sell it. So I kept the place from falling apart, or at least from burning down. The office had that smell of old cigarettes and lemon cleaner that never really went away. I'd make a round every hour, check doors, lights, cameras, make notes on a clipboard no one would ever read. My biggest excitement came from catching teenagers sneaking in to drink. That night started normal. Cold wind off Lake Erie, rain misting against the windows, the hum of old fluorescent bulbs in the lobby. I poured coffee that tasted like rust and flipped through the logbook. At 1:27 a.m., every light in the building blinked out. I sat in darkness for a heartbeat, waiting for the power to surge back. It didn't. Outside, the parking lot lights flickered and died too, leaving the motel swallowed in black. Cleveland had power cuts sometimes, but this was different. The hum of the generator didn't kick on. I grabbed my flashlight and went to the back corridor where the breaker panel was. My boots echoed against the floor. When I opened the panel, my stomach tightened. The generator wires weren't cut. They were disconnected. Neatly. Deliberately. Someone had done this by hand. I turned, the flashlight beam jittering on the wall. Hello? No answer. Just the sound of dripping from a pipe somewhere above. Then the motion lights down the hall flicked on, one by one following me. Click, click, click. Each light triggered just after I passed, as though something was pacing me from behind. Anyone here? I said again, louder this time. My voice came back hollow. When I reached the front desk, the intercom crackled. A voice pushed through the static, distorted, familiar. You shouldn't be here anymore. It was my voice. I froze. My thumb hovered over the talk button, but I couldn't make myself press it. Instead, I turned to the CCTV monitors. All 10 screens showed live feeds of empty halls, until one flickered. It showed me, walking in circles through the lobby, over and over. But I hadn't moved an inch. I leaned closer. In the corner of the screen, a timestamp blinked red, 03:06 a.m. I looked at the clock above the door. It read 1:43 a.m. The footage wasn't live. It was from the future. I tried resetting the feed, but the screens only glitched worse. Images jumping, colors bleeding. Every channel showed the same thing. Me, pacing the lobby, turning in the same slow circle. I grabbed the radio, calling out to any of the 3 guests staying that night. This is security. Power's down. Please stay in your rooms. No response. The hall to the east wing smelled of bleach and mildew. I'd done my last patrol there an hour ago, but the cleaning carts were gone. Every door was cracked open just enough to show darkness. I checked the first room, empty. Sheets still tucked tight, TV unplugged. The second, same. But when I came to 209, I stopped. The door hung open wider and the faint sound of running water came from inside. Hello? I said, stepping in. The bathroom light buzzed weakly. A mop leaned against the wall, still wet. Someone had been cleaning recently, except no one was on duty. I stepped closer and saw my own reflection in the fogged mirror, but it was smiling. I stumbled back, slamming into the wall. When I looked again, the mirror was blank. My hands shook as I pulled the radio. Dispatch, this is Crescent Motel security. Possible break-in. Static answered. I went back downstairs, trying to shake off the adrenaline. When I got to the office, something new waited on the counter. 3 room keys that hadn't been there before. Each tag had a number scratched off except one. Manager's apartment. The apartment door had been sealed since Heller died. I'd never even seen inside. I turned toward the monitors again. This time they showed movement on the second floor. Shapes of people, faint and grainy, pushing cleaning carts, dragging mops across the floor. Old uniforms, old faces, people who'd quit months ago. I bolted upstairs. The hall was empty except for puddles glistening under emergency lights. But there, wet footprints leading back toward the stairs. They weren't mine. I followed them to the office door. My office. The knob turned easily, though I always kept it locked. The chair was still spinning. Papers scattered across the desk. The phone rang once, sharp and shrill. When I picked it up, the voice was waiting. "He's checking the east wing," it said. "Now he's turning around." It described my movements exactly. My chest felt tight. "Who is this?" The voice didn't pause. "He's scared now. He's going to find the apartment." I slammed the phone down. The key tag on the counter seemed to glint under the flashlight. My hand trembled as I picked it up. The door to the manager's apartment sat at the far end of the hall, paint peeling, a rusted private plaque nailed crooked above the handle. The key slid in easily. Inside smelled of dust and burnt coffee. A thin layer of grime coated everything, the couch, the table, the walls. Against the far wall, a curtain hung over what looked like a large window, but when I pulled it back, I froze. It wasn't a window. It was a wall of monitors. Dozens of screens, some black and dead, others glowing faintly. They showed every hallway, every room, and me. On one screen, I was sitting in the office, on another patrolling the parking lot. Different nights, different hours. I was everywhere at once. A desk below the screens held a reel-to-reel recorder. It clicked on by itself. My voice filled the room. Subject 119 logged entering East Wing. Subject 119 displays signs of disorientation. I backed away. The maintenance logs scattered across the desk bore my name in neat handwriting, entries dated years apart. Then I saw it, a photograph pinned to the wall. Me, standing outside the motel under a different date, 2018. I whispered, "That's not possible." At some point, exhaustion or fear, or both, took over. My head spun, every light pulsing brighter until I couldn't tell what was real. Footsteps echoed in the hall again. I turned, flashlight trembling. A figure stood just beyond the doorway, dressed in my uniform, holding my clipboard. I stepped closer. It mirrored me exactly. "Who are you?" I whispered. The figure smiled, voice flat and familiar. "I told you. You shouldn't be here anymore." The lights flared and everything went white. When I opened my eyes, dawn spilled through the blinds. The hum of electricity returned. The motel was quiet again, empty. I sat at the front desk, staring at the monitors. On one, I saw the day clerk unlocking the door, stepping inside. He looked around, confused. I tried to call out, but no sound came. On the screen, he found the chair spinning slowly. Then the feed flickered, freezing on my face, staring into the lens. A file appeared on the terminal. Observation complete. Subject 119, terminated. In chasing routine, we sometimes stop noticing how small our world becomes. We live the same hours, walk the same halls, until the line between living and merely existing fades away. The Crescent Motel reminds us that if you never step out of your loop, one day, the loop might go on without you. I've never been a believer in signs or bad omens. I'm a numbers guy. Straightforward, practical, predictable. That's why when Lena found the listing for the Love Nest on Miller Lane, I didn't think twice. It was advertised as a colonial home built for two, secluded, rustic, with a clawfoot bathtub and acres of quiet Pennsylvania countryside. We needed the break. After months of fighting about work, money, and everything else, a long weekend away sounded like the fix. The drive from Philly took about 4 hours. The farther we got from the city, the quieter it became. The woods swallowed up the road until it turned into gravel, and when the GPS said, "You've arrived," we saw the house sitting at the top of a long, sloped driveway. It was pretty, in a postcard kind of way. White siding, black shutters, ivy crawling up one side. But even before we stepped out of the car, the air felt heavy, like the air before a storm. Lena got out first. "It's perfect," she said, spinning in a slow circle with her arms stretched. Her red scarf fluttered against the dull sky. "Yeah," I said, forcing a smile. "Perfect." Inside, the place looked newly remodeled but strangely dated at the same time. Every wall held framed black and white photos, couples smiling on the staircase, in the kitchen, on the porch. At first I thought they were old marketing shots, but each couple looked different. Still, all of them were in the same pose. Standing halfway up the stairs, the man's arm around the woman's waist, both faces blurred or out of focus. "Kinda weird," I said, pointing at one. Lena shrugged. "Maybe it's supposed to be artsy." I didn't like how the house sounded, though. Quiet but alive. There was this faint crackle, like static, running through the walls. When I flicked on a lamp, the bulb popped and went dark. Lena laughed nervously. "Old wiring?" "Yeah," I said. "Old wiring." We unpacked, made dinner, opened a bottle of wine. By the time the sun went down, the house had settled into its own rhythm. Wood creaking, wind scraping against the windows. We told ourselves it was nothing. We needed this weekend. We needed peace. That night, I fell asleep to the sound of the radiator humming, and then Lena screamed. It was 3:14 a.m. when I jolted up. Lena sat upright in bed, clutching her chest. Her face was pale, her hair stuck to her forehead. "You okay?" I said, reaching for her shoulder. She shook her head. "I had this dream," she whispered. I was standing in the hallway, the staircase. I could hear a camera clicking. Someone was behind me taking pictures. Before I could say anything, she pulled the blanket aside. Sitting on her chest was a Polaroid photo. It showed her, standing in the stairwell, her back turned toward the camera, exactly like she'd described. I felt my stomach turn. "You're messing with me," I said automatically. "You took that earlier." "Paul, I didn't take that picture," she snapped. "I was asleep." The photo looked fresh, the white border still clean, no dust, no yellowing. But the Polaroid camera in the living room was empty. No film, no batteries. We didn't sleep after that. I stayed awake listening to every creak, every whisper of wind against the siding. Lena sat at the foot of the bed, clutching that photo like it might disappear if she let go. When the first light of morning came, we packed our bags. The plan was to leave, drive to the nearest diner, laugh about it over pancakes, and never talk about this again. But when I turned the key in the ignition, the car only made a clicking sound. The battery light blinked twice and died. Both our phones were dead too. No signal, no power. I checked the charger, the fuse box. Nothing. Every piece of tech had just stopped. Outside, the road looked wrong. I couldn't say how, but the driveway curved differently, the trees shifted. The world looked the same but off, like a painting done by someone who'd never seen the real thing. By noon, the house felt smaller. I could hear something faint, a low murmur behind the vents. At first, I thought it was the wind, but then I heard my name. "Paul." Lena froze when she heard it too. We followed the sound to the hallway vent. The air coming from it was cold, even though the heat was on. She knelt down, listening close. "Say something," I whispered. "Hello?" she said. The voice came again, clearer this time, as if moving closer. "Paul, don't let her leave." I grabbed her hand. We're not staying here another minute. We packed fast. Just essentials. I tried the car again. Dead. I ran up the road on foot, but after 10 minutes the trees looped back, spitting me out at the same gravel driveway. The same house. When I came back, Lena was standing in the living room staring at the wall. "Listen," she said. I did. A faint rustle inside the drywall, like something shifting. I pulled the small hammer from the toolbox and hit the wall. Once. Twice. The plaster cracked open, spilling dust and insulation. Then, something else fell out. Polaroids. Hundreds of them. Old, curled, some with dates written in the corner. 1972, 1989, 2003. All couples. All terrified. Same furniture, same staircase. The last one showed us, smiling on the porch when we first arrived. In the corner of the image, in the window's reflection, was a third figure holding a camera. Lena started shaking. "Paul, what is this? Who took that picture?" I stared at the photo, trying to make sense of it. The figure's face was shadowed, the shape too tall, too straight, like someone in a mask. "It's fake," I said, even though I didn't believe it. "Someone's messing with us." She backed away. "You don't think—" "I think we need to get out. Now." We searched for another exit. Cellar door, back door, anything. The cellar was locked from the inside, chain-wrapped. The back window was painted shut. Every way out was sealed like someone had prepared for us to stay. Lena's breathing turned fast, ragged. "Paul, we're not supposed to be here." "What do you mean?" She pointed to a line of Polaroids still clinging to the insulation. Couples that looked eerily similar. The last few showed faces almost identical to ours. "We've been here before," she said. Her words hit me like a punch. "No, we're just tired. We're seeing patterns." But part of me wasn't sure anymore. The static in the walls grew louder. It pulsed like a heartbeat. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by the window, watching for headlights, waiting for morning. I kept hearing the faint click of a camera shutter somewhere in the dark. When the sun rose, the power flickered back. Our phones buzzed, 2% battery each. I called for help, and within an hour, a tow truck found the road and pulled us out. The driver was a gray-haired man with a kind face. "Didn't think anyone stayed up there anymore," he said. "That place burned down years ago." I looked at him. "No, we were just—" But when I turned around, the driveway was empty. Nothing but the outline of a foundation swallowed by weeds. He shrugged. "Happens. That road plays tricks. GPS don't work right here." We didn't speak for the rest of the drive. That night, back in our apartment, I unpacked my bag. At the bottom sat a Polaroid I didn't remember packing. It was Lena and me, on the staircase of Miller Lane. Only this time, we weren't smiling. Obsession with escape can trap you in its own loop. Lena and I wanted to fix our lives by running away, but sometimes distance doesn't heal. It only mirrors what's broken. When something feels wrong, listen to it. A house, a relationship, a life. They all whisper before they collapse. They say the desert doesn't forgive mistakes, but I'd never been one to listen to sayings. I was a traveling ultrasound tech from Denver, spending my 20s bouncing between small hospitals and clinics across the Southwest. It wasn't glamorous, but the solitude suited me. There's something about the hum of the highway and the way the sky stretches wider than your thoughts that makes you believe you're headed somewhere, even if you're just running in circles. That night, I was supposed to stop in St. George, Utah. Instead, somewhere past Mesquite, my GPS froze on a gray screen that said off-road, and my phone battery gasped its last breath. I'd been driving 12 hours straight, my eyelids heavy as sandbags. When I saw a cracked green exit sign, letters half-eaten by rust, I didn't think. I just turned. Maybe I wanted to rest, or maybe I wanted to disappear for a while. The road twisted through miles of nothing. Just cacti, boulders, and a wind that whispered like it knew my name. When the flickering neon appeared, it felt like salvation. Dust Haven Motel. Vacancy. The sign buzzed faintly, half the letters dead, the N trembling like a heartbeat. The building sat squat and tired, a row of 8 rooms facing the desert, with a lone ice machine humming under a flickering bulb. Inside, the air smelled of old cigarettes and lemon cleaner. Behind the counter sat an old man in a brown cardigan, his name tag long faded. His eyes had that watery, faraway look of someone who'd been waiting too long. "Evening," he said. "Looks like you've been driving a spell. Need a room?" I nodded, sliding a 20 across the counter. "Cash only," he said. "Card reader's busted." "That's fine," I said. He reached for a set of tarnished keys and handed me one. "Room 8, quiet one." Something about the way he said it made the air feel heavier. "Thanks," I murmured, forcing a smile. "Just one night," he said, eyes not leaving mine. "Sun comes up fast here. Don't sleep through it." I told myself he was just lonely, a relic like the motel. But as I walked to my car, I felt his gaze cling to me through the window. Room 8 was at the far end, beneath a dead security light. The door stuck before giving way with a sigh. The room smelled faintly of mildew and old rain. I dropped my bag on the bed, kicked off my shoes, and turned on the TV for noise. Static. Then, flicker. A grainy feed appeared, black and white surveillance footage of the motel parking lot. My car sat there, headlights still on. The timestamp read 11:43 p.m., 7 minutes in the future. I stared at it until the screen flickered again, showing the same angle, same car, but now the trunk was open, no one in sight. My pulse quickened. I clicked through channels, nothing but snow. When I switched back, the image was gone, replaced by a local weather report that shouldn't have existed for a town that didn't seem real. "It's just a glitch," I whispered. "Just old wiring." But as I lay back, the TV clicked off by itself. The silence pressed against my chest. Then came the sounds, soft, rhythmic footsteps above me. Except there was no second floor. I sat up, heart pounding, eyes on the ceiling. The steps were steady, deliberate, like someone pacing. I tried to rationalize it. Pipes expanding, old wood shifting, desert wind doing its tricks. But there was something human about that rhythm. I grabbed my phone out of habit, forgetting it was dead, and cursed under my breath. The room's air vent began to hum softly, carrying whispers I couldn't quite make out. Faint conversations. 2 voices. A man and a woman. One calm, one pleading. I pressed my ear to the vent. "Told you not again. We can't leave her here." "No one leaves Dust Haven." My stomach dropped. I stumbled back and yanked the cord from the vent. The whispering stopped instantly. "Jesus Christ," I muttered. I opened the door to find the old man. But the hallway wasn't the hallway anymore. It stretched far beyond the 8 rooms I'd seen earlier. Door after door after door, each marked with a tarnished brass number 8. Every door had a key sticking out of the lock. The desert wind moaned faintly through the walls, or maybe through me. "Hello?" I called out. My voice echoed endlessly. No answer. I turned back toward my room, but it was gone. Just more room 8 stretching into the dark. I began to walk. The carpet changed colors every few steps. Brown, then red, then patterned with flowers that pulsed faintly like veins. My breathing grew shallow. After what felt like forever, I reached a vending machine humming in the corner. Inside, beneath rows of dusty sodas, was a reflection, mine, but older. My hair grayer, my face tired. The reflection moved a second after I did. That's when I ran. I sprinted down the corridor, keys jingling from every door as if something behind them stirred. When I finally hit a dead end, I slammed against the wall, panting. The wall wasn't solid. It rippled like water. I fell through. I landed hard on linoleum, gasping. I was back in the lobby. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead. The front desk sat empty, the old man nowhere in sight. Behind the counter, a door hung slightly open, light spilling from within. I stepped through. The room smelled of dust and photochemicals. Polaroids covered the walls, each labeled in careful handwriting. Guest 1, Guest 2, Guest 3. They were all faces like mine, travelers, drifters, tired souls. Men in flannel shirts, women with suitcases. Every one of them posed in front of room 8. I found the latest photo on the desk. My own face stared back. The timestamp was tonight's date. Something moved behind me. The old man stood in the doorway. His face looked different now, slack, waxen, like he'd been sculpted from candle wax and left too close to the fire. "You shouldn't be back here," he said softly. "What is this place?" I demanded. He sighed, eyes glistening. "Just a resting stop for the lost. People like you always find us." "I didn't find you," I said. "I got lost." He smiled sadly. "That's what I said." I backed toward the lobby. "I'm leaving." "You can't." "Watch me." He didn't move to stop me, but his reflection in the glass counter smiled wider than his real mouth. Outside, the night was darker than before. Moon swallowed, stars gone. My car sat where I'd left it, trunk open, just like the video. The keys were in the ignition, engine still warm. I drove. The headlights carved a tunnel through blackness. I expected to hit the interstate within minutes, but the road kept winding, looping, stretching. My gas gauge dipped lower with every mile. When I passed the Dust Haven sign again, I screamed. I turned around, floored the accelerator, and sped in the opposite direction. 10 minutes later, the same sign flickered into view. I hit the brakes so hard the car fishtailed. I stumbled out, breathing dust, staring at the impossible loop. That's when I heard the TV again, muffled, like it was playing inside the trunk. I opened it. Inside sat an old motel uniform neatly folded, embroidered with Dust Haven staff. Under it, a Polaroid camera and a stack of blank film. I slammed the trunk shut and ran into the desert, barefoot, sand biting my feet. The motel lights shimmered behind me, dimming with distance until they vanished completely. Then, headlights. A semi barreled down the road. I waved my arms, screaming. The truck hissed to a stop, and the driver, a man with kind eyes and a Denver Broncos cap, leaned out. "You all right, miss?" "I just need to get out of here," I said. He nodded. "Hop in." As we drove off, I watched the horizon swallow the night. "You from around here?" he asked. "No," I said. "I was just passing through." He smiled. "Aren't we all?" I didn't notice the camera lens blinking faintly on the dashboard until much later. By dawn, the desert stretched behind us like a sea of ash. I turned to look out the passenger window and froze. In the glass, my reflection wasn't mine. She wore the uniform from the trunk, smiling faintly, her name tag reading, Lena, Dust Haven staff. "Hey," the trucker said. "You okay?" I nodded, unable to speak. When we reached the state line, he pulled into a rest stop and went to get coffee. I looked in the mirror again. For the first time, there was no reflection at all. They found the truck 2 days later, parked on the shoulder. The dashcam footage showed the driver alone the whole time, talking to no one. But as the camera cut out, a faint reflection flickered in the window beside him. A woman wearing a brown uniform, smiling. The lost don't always vanish. Sometimes they just forget to stop wandering. We all run from something, grief, guilt, emptiness. But if we never face what drives us, we risk becoming permanent guests in our own purgatory. Dust Haven wasn't a place. It was a reminder that the roads we take to escape ourselves often lead right back to who we truly are. There's a kind of tired that settles in your bones after a long haul. Not the kind a nap can fix, but the kind that feels like rust. That's the kind I had the night I pulled into the Pine Rest Motel, off Highway 71. I'd been hauling cattle from Kansas to Missouri, 14 hours straight, diesel fumes in my lungs and static country on the radio. The logbook said I'd earned my break. The motel looked like it hadn't seen business since Reagan was president. 2 rows of rooms, 6 in total, facing a gravel lot and a flickering neon sign that buzzed, Vacancy. I almost kept driving, but fatigue won. The clerk behind the front desk was an old man with a thin mustache and a trucker's cap that read, Service with a Smile. He looked me over like he'd been expecting me. Long night? He asked. You could say that, I said. You got a room? Only one left. Number 6. He slid a key across the counter. Not a card, a key. Brass, with a worn tag that read simply, 6. Room 6, huh? I said. He smiled, but his eyes didn't. That's the lucky one. I didn't ask what that meant. I just wanted a shower and sleep. The room smelled faintly of disinfectant and old curtains, a single lamp, a creaky bed, and a humming mini-fridge by the door. It wasn't much, but it was shelter. I washed up, ate a cold sandwich I'd picked up hours earlier, and laid down. The sound of my own heartbeat filled the silence. When I woke, the clock on the nightstand read 2:03 a.m. At first, I couldn't tell what pulled me out of sleep. Then I heard it. Boots crunching gravel outside my door. Slow. Heavy. I rolled over and peered through the blinds. A man stood by my truck. Tall. Still. Just staring up at my window. My gut clenched. I kept my flashlight by the bed, so I grabbed it and slipped on my jacket. The air outside was thick with dew and diesel. But when I reached the truck, the man was gone. The gravel was smooth. No footprints. Morning came dull and gray. The air smelled like wet hay and coffee from the lobby. I walked out to my rig, rubbing my eyes, half convinced I'd dreamt the whole thing. Then I saw the lock on my cab, cut clean through. Inside, my toolbox was empty, my socket set, my ratchets, even the spare wrench my dad gave me years back, gone. But my wallet, my fuel card, the cargo, untouched. The old clerk was leaning against the counter when I came in. Someone break into your truck? He asked, like he already knew. Looks that way, I said. You got cameras out there? He shook his head. We're old-fashioned here. Anybody else stay last night? He thought about it a second too long. Nope. Just you. That was a lie. I'd seen headlights pulling out when I checked in. Then how do you explain this? I asked, showing him a picture on my phone of the cut lock. He just shrugged. Highway thieves. Happens now and then. I left it there and called the county sheriff's office. 2 deputies showed up an hour later. One young and green, the other chewing gum like it was his job. Nothing much we can do, the older one said, jotting notes. You say you heard someone outside? Yeah, around 2. Big guy, wearing boots. He nodded, half listening. Any tracks? No, none. That made him look up. They dusted the cab, took a few photos, and promised to file a report. Before they left, the younger deputy leaned close. You ought to skip this place next time, he said quietly. People talk. About what? He hesitated. About things walking around here that don't leave prints. I should have taken off right then, but something about that phrase, things that don't leave prints, got stuck in my head. Behind the motel stretched a narrow strip of woods. I figured if someone had broken in, maybe they hid out back. The ground was damp, the air still. I found fresh tire tracks, leading off the gravel and into the trees. Small, maybe from a pickup. About 50 yards in, the trees opened to a clearing. A shack sat there, tin roof, padlocked door. It didn't look abandoned. I called the sheriff again, told them what I found. They sent a new deputy this time, a woman with sharp eyes. She pried the padlock off with a crowbar from her cruiser. The door creaked open and the smell of grease and rust hit us both. Inside were piles of car parts, tools, and scrap metal stacked like trophies. My wrench was there too, engraved with R.H. head on the handle. She looked at me. These yours? Some, I said. She called it in, and soon 2 more patrol cars showed. They took pictures, logged everything, and left me sitting on the tailgate of my truck, staring at the shack. One of the officers came back out holding a USB drive. "You're not gonna like this," he said. The footage was from a security cam mounted behind the building. It showed me, unloading my own tools at 2:13 a.m. Eyes glassy, moving like I was half asleep. I couldn't remember any of it. That night, I didn't leave. I couldn't. I needed to understand. I waited until midnight and went back to the office. The old clerk was there, polishing a mug that didn't need polishing. "We need to talk," I said. He sighed, setting the mug down. "I figured you'd come back. What's going on here?" He looked at the door, then at me. "Room 6 changes people." I laughed once, bitter. "You blaming ghosts?" "Not ghosts," he said softly. "Habit, memory. Something about this place sticks to folks, drivers mostly. They check in, go to sleep, and do things they don't remember. Always useful things." "Useful?" He nodded toward the woods. "That shack's been restocked for years. The sheriff knows. Everyone knows. Nobody stops it." "You're saying I stole from myself?" He didn't answer. I leaned in, anger cutting through the fear. "Why me?" "Because you stayed in room 6, he said, "and because you needed something to do in your sleep." I don't remember leaving that night. I remember rain starting to fall, my headlights slicing through the dark highway, but nothing after that. When I came to, it was morning. My truck was parked in front of the same motel. The door to room 6 was open. Inside, the bed was untouched, sheets crisp, lamp off. On the nightstand lay my wrench, clean, polished, initials bright. The old clerk was gone. So was his car. I tried to leave, but the ignition wouldn't turn. My hands shook so bad I dropped the keys. In the rearview mirror, I thought I saw someone walking out of the woods, tall, wearing my jacket. When I blinked, he was gone. The next driver who stopped that day said the room was already open when he checked in. He told the sheriff later he found a wrench on the nightstand with his initials carved into it. Sometimes the things that control us aren't supernatural at all. They're the routines, the fatigue, the blind trust we give to places that promise rest. The story of room 6 reminds us that when you stop paying attention to your own actions, someone or something else just might start paying attention for you. By the time I saw the faded Silver Pines Motor Lodge and sign blinking through the rain, I was too tired to care where I stopped. Nursing night shifts will hollow you out if you let them, and I'd let them. After 3 12-hour shifts at St. Margaret's, the rural hospital off Route 19, my hands were still trembling from caffeine and adrenaline. The plan was simple: sleep a few hours before the next shift. The motel looked cheap but clean, wedged between a shuttered diner and a stretch of pine forest that looked black even in daylight. Inside, the lobby smelled like lemon cleaner and mothballs. A frail woman sat behind the desk, her hands shaking as she pushed the register toward me. Her hair was pinned up in silver curls and she wore a faded uniform that probably hadn't changed since the 70s. "Long drive?" she asked, her voice soft but quavering. "Just a long week," I said. "I'm a nurse. Need some quiet before I head back." She gave me a slow nod, studying me longer than felt natural. Then she reached beneath the counter and slid me a key on a cracked leather tag. "Room 9, she said. "Best view of the woods." Her eyes flicked toward the window, then back at me. "You'll like it there." Something in the way she said it didn't sound like a suggestion, more like a decision that had already been made. I wanted to ask about other rooms, but exhaustion won. I signed the log, took the key and hauled my overnight bag down the row of rooms, each with chipped doors and peeling green paint. Room 9 was at the end, quiet, facing a wall of pines swaying in the wind. Inside, the room was basic but tidy. Floral bedspread, wood paneling, an old rotary phone on the nightstand that looked more like decoration than anything useful. I kicked off my shoes, lay down, and fell asleep to the sound of wind scraping against the trees. It was around 2:47 a.m. when the knocking started. At first, I thought it was someone at the door. 3 slow knocks. I sat up, heart pounding, listening. Nothing. I waited another minute. Then again, 3 knocks. But this time I realized it wasn't coming from the door. It was coming from behind my headboard. I turned on the lamp, staring at the wall. The sound was slow, deliberate. Knock, 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 like someone testing the wood from the other side. "Hello?" I said before I could stop myself. Silence. I pressed my ear against the wall. For a moment, there was nothing. Then a faint whisper, a word I couldn't make out. I threw on a hoodie and went to the front desk. The night clerk was a young man, maybe early 20s, scrolling through his phone. "Sorry to bother you," I said, trying to sound calm. "There's some kind of noise coming from the wall in my room. Room 9. He frowned. "That can't be right." "Why not?" "There's no one in 8. Been empty for weeks." My stomach dropped. "You sure?" He nodded. "Positive. I'm the only one working tonight." When I got back to my room, the knocking had stopped. I turned off the light and tried to tell myself it was pipes, old wood, something explainable. But I slept with the lamp on anyway. By morning, I'd half convinced myself it had been a dream, until I noticed the headboard. It had shifted a few inches from the wall. Inches. When I moved the bed back to check, I saw it. A small metal vent sealed shut with rusted screws. Dust ringed the edges. Something about it felt wrong. I knelt down, running my fingers along the edges. It wasn't an air vent. Too small, too shallow. More like a crawl space cover. At breakfast, the old clerk acted different. Her smile was forced, her eyes darting past me to the window. "Did you sleep well?" she asked. "Mostly," I lied. "Though I think there's something behind the wall. Maybe a loose pipe?" Her face changed, the way people look when they hear bad news they already expected. "Don't go near that wall again," she said quietly. I frowned. "Why? What's behind it?" She folded her hands. "Nothing that needs seeing." I wanted to push her, but the tremor in her voice made me stop. By sunset, I decided to ignore her warning. Curiosity is a funny thing. It feels like courage when really it's temptation wearing a brave face. After my shower, I found my pocket screwdriver in my bag and started working at the screws. They protested, screeching against the metal, flaking rust into my hands. When the last screw fell, the vent cover clattered to the floor. A smell drifted out, dry, stale air, like old paper and dust. Inside was a narrow crawl space, barely 2 feet high. In the middle sat an old rotary phone. Black, the receiver off the hook. I stared at it for a long minute before picking it up. At first I heard only static, a faint hum like air passing through wires, then a voice calm and clear. "Mara." My name. I froze. "Who is this?" The voice didn't answer. It began repeating and word for word on my check-in details from the night before. My name, my address, my car's license plate, the last thing I'd said to the clerk. "How do you know that?" I whispered. The voice paused. Then softly, "Room 9 is never empty." I dropped the receiver and stumbled back. The static grew louder, almost angry, vibrating through the vent. Then silence. That's when the knocking started again. But now it was faster, urgent, coming from inside the crawl space. I ran. I don't even remember grabbing my keys. I just remember the cold night air, the gravel under my shoes, and the old clerk standing by the office door, tears streaking her face. "I told you not to open it," she said. Behind us, every motel room door swung open, one after another, slamming against the walls, all except room 9. I don't remember driving away. The next clear memory is of dawn breaking over the highway, my reflection pale in the windshield, hands shaking on the wheel. When the police went back to investigate, the Silver Pines Motor Lodge was empty. Every door stood open, every room stripped bare, except room 9. They said it was locked from the inside. The old rotary phone was off the hook, a faint hum on the line. They never found the clerk, or me, at least not in the way they expected, because when I dream now, I still hear it. The soft tap of knuckles through drywall, 3 times, slow and steady. Sometimes, in the half-sleep between shifts, I imagine the phone ringing, and a voice on the other end saying, calm as ever, "Welcome back, Mara. Room 9 is ready." Curiosity opens doors that wisdom keeps closed. Mara's story reminds us that some mysteries exist not to be solved, but to be respected. The need to know can become the very thing that traps us, because not every answer brings peace. Some only echo back what was already waiting in the dark. I always believed the hardest part about leaving home was the first mile. Once the road stretched long enough, the past disappeared behind you like it never existed. That night, though, I learned that some roads don't let you leave so easily. It started on a Thursday evening in late September. I'd spent 3 days in San Diego for a work conference, sales meetings, small talk, and one too many drinks at the hotel bar. By the time I finally got back on the road heading for Salt Lake City, I was running mostly on caffeine and bad decisions. I thought I could make the 9-hour drive in one shot if I left after sunset. I was wrong. Around midnight, the desert highway had gone completely silent. No cars, no gas stations, nothing but the hum of my tires on cracked asphalt. My phone showed no service, and the fuel gauge had dropped lower than I wanted to admit. That was when I saw it. A flickering neon sign a mile ahead that read, LAN, Motel. The rest of the letters blinked in and out, but I caught the word, Vacancy, glowing faintly beneath. The place looked like something from another time. Single row of rooms, flat roof, a rusted soda machine near the office door. A light glowed in the window. I was too tired to care how run down it looked. Anything with a bed and working lock would do. Inside, the air smelled faintly of cleaning chemicals. A man sat behind the counter, middle-aged, hair combed neatly to the side. His white shirt looked too crisp for a place like that. He smiled wide when he saw me. "Late one tonight, huh?" he said. His name tag read, Evan. "Yeah," I said, setting my ID on the counter. "Just passing through." He typed something slowly into an old desktop computer, the keys clicking like bones. "Room 9, he said, sliding a brass key toward me. "Farthest down. Nice and quiet." He said nice and quiet the way someone might say don't ask questions, but I was half asleep on my feet. I took the key, paid cash, and thanked him. "Long drive tomorrow," he said. "Get some rest." As I walked out, I noticed his eyes followed me through the window until I disappeared into the darkness. Room 9 was at the very end of the row. The gravel crunched under my shoes, echoing louder than it should have. The desert was dead quiet. No wind, no insects, just the low hum of the neon sign back by the road. When I unlocked the door, the hinges squealed like they hadn't been used in years. The room smelled faintly of bleach and something sweeter underneath, almost like wilted flowers. The air conditioner buzzed constantly, spitting out cool air that barely reached the bed. A single lamp lit the room in a soft amber glow. I went into the bathroom to wash up. The mirror was cracked slightly on the corner, and as I leaned closer, I noticed something strange along the bottom edge. Tiny etchings scratched into the glass. They looked like numbers, 9, 8, 7, all the way down to 1, carved faintly near the right frame. For a minute I thought it was just vandalism, maybe bored guests leaving marks over the years. But the numbers formed a pattern, descending from left to right, perfectly spaced, like someone had been counting down. I tried to laugh it off, telling myself it was probably a weird prank, maybe from kids. But that laugh didn't last long. When I turned off the bathroom light, the mirror flickered for half a second before going dark. Static buzzed faintly from somewhere, maybe the air conditioner, maybe the old TV. I got into bed fully dressed, just to be safe. The sheets were stiff and smelled faintly like old detergent. That's when I heard it, a faint thump against the wall behind the headboard. Then again, steady, slow. Thump. Pause. Thump. I told myself it was plumbing or an old pipe shifting, but it kept happening. Rhythmic, deliberate. I picked up the room phone to call the office. The line hissed, no dial tone, only faint static. I could have sworn I heard breathing on the other end. My cell had no service either. At that point, my exhaustion gave way to adrenaline. I grabbed my keys and stepped outside. The night was colder than before. Every sound seemed amplified. The gravel under my shoes, the wind scraping across the roof. The office light was still on, but when I got close enough to the window, the chair behind the counter was empty. The phone was off the hook, swinging gently. The door was unlocked. "Evan?" I called out. No answer. I stepped inside, and that's when I noticed the keys scattered across the counter, each tagged with a brass number, except one. Room 9 was missing. Something moved behind the office door. A shape bent low, dragging something heavy across the floor. I froze. The air smelled faintly metallic, like rust and something else. Sweet and sour, like spoiled fruit. "Evan?" I said again, my voice shaky. The movement stopped. A second later, I heard footsteps, measured, slow. Then the door opened. It wasn't Evan. A woman stepped out, maybe mid-30s, wearing a gray uniform identical to his but faded. Her hair was tied neatly back, face pale in the yellow light. "Can I help you?" she asked. Her voice was calm, practiced, almost rehearsed, the same tone Evan had used earlier. "I was staying in room 9, I said. "There's something wrong. The phone's dead and I heard—" "You forgot to check out," she interrupted. Her lips smiled, but her eyes didn't. She lifted something from behind the counter. My key. My throat tightened. "No, Look, I'm leaving, okay?" She stepped closer. "You already left." Her words made no sense, but before I could respond, the lights flickered once and went out completely. When they came back on, she was gone. The office was empty again, chair turned away, door half open to the dark. That was when I heard it again. The thumping. Not just from one wall this time, from all around the motel. Every room. Thump. 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 I ran. I jumped into my car, slammed the door, and twisted the key. The engine gave a dry, choking click but didn't turn over. Again, nothing but that dead clicking sound. Gasoline smell filled the air. I looked toward the motel. Every single room light had come on at once. Behind each curtain, shadows moved, tall, slow-moving shapes pacing like they were waiting. The neon sign by the road flickered. The word vacancy went dark. Then faintly, new words glowed through the broken glass. Welcome back. That was when my body finally gave up logic. I bolted from the car and sprinted down the road toward the dark desert, following the faint reflection of headlights that might have been miles away. I ran until my chest burned, until my vision blurred from exhaustion. Somewhere between the adrenaline and the panic, I must have blacked out. I woke up in a hospital 2 days later. The police told me a trucker found me lying by the roadside at dawn, dehydrated and disoriented. They'd gone back to the coordinates I gave them, Lantern Motel, exit 227, but there was nothing there except the concrete foundation of a burned-down building. According to county records, the motel had closed after a fire in 1998. No one named Evan ever worked there. The owner had died in the fire trying to save a guest who'd locked herself in room 9. The part that still keeps me up isn't the fire. It's what the police found when they searched the site. An old guest book, mostly charred, but one line on the last page still legible in fresh ink. 9. My name. Sometimes exhaustion, loneliness, and fear can twist what we see into something else. Something we believe is real because it feels real. But even if what I saw that night was a hallucination, the danger was real enough. The road, the dark, the isolation, those are things that break people in slow, quiet ways. I'd been on the road for 9 hours when the rain started. Not the light cinematic kind. The heavy, relentless kind that makes your wipers squeal and your eyes ache from focusing too long. I was driving through Nebraska for business. Another string of meetings and long stretches of nothing between them. The company was trying to cut costs, so I'd driven instead of flown. At first I didn't mind. I used to love the open road, a straight shot through quiet fields and towns that felt frozen in time. But after a few hundred miles, the silence starts to press in. By the time I hit the outskirts of a small town called Red Hollow, the clock read 11:47 p.m. My shoulders ached, my throat was dry, and my eyelids felt heavy. I knew I shouldn't keep driving in that condition. I spotted a faded blue sign off the highway exit. Miller's Motor Lodge. Vacancy. Low rates. Free cable. I pulled off. The place sat at the end of a cracked asphalt lot, the kind of motel that hadn't been updated since the 70s. 2 stories, chipped paint, half the bulbs in the vacancy sign burnt out. Only 3 cars were parked out front, scattered like they didn't want to be near each other. Inside the lobby, a bell jingled when I walked in. The air smelled faintly of mildew and stale coffee. Behind the counter sat a thin man in his late 50s wearing a wrinkled dress shirt and a forced smile. His name tag read, Tum. "Long night?" he asked, glancing up from an old ledger. "Yeah," I said. "Just need a bed till morning." He hesitated. "Sure thing. You're lucky. Not many guests tonight." He slid a brass key across the counter. "Room 9. Upstairs. End of the hall." I noticed the pause before he handed it over. "Something wrong with it?" I asked. He cleared his throat. "No, sir. Just old building. You'll hear some creaks, that's all." I nodded and took the key. The carpeted stairs creaked under my weight as I climbed. When I reached the door marked 9-9, I noticed a faint outline on the wallpaper, like another number had once been there before it was scrubbed out. I told myself I was imagining it. The room was small but clean enough. Beige walls, a single window overlooking the parking lot, a humming mini-fridge. I kicked off my shoes, threw my duffel on the chair, and lay down. I didn't realize how tired I was until the silence hit. The kind that makes you aware of your own heartbeat. After maybe 20 minutes, I heard it. A soft creak above me, like footsteps. Then another. It went quiet for a moment, then started again. Slow pacing, directly above my bed. I sat up, irritated. The clerk had said there were only 3 rooms occupied, and the one above mine shouldn't have been one of them. I walked over to the window, looked out, just the parking lot and the rain. A tall figure stood under the flickering sign. Too tall, maybe. The light stuttered on and off, so it was hard to make out details. I could tell he was facing the building, his head tilted slightly like he was listening. When the sign blinked again, he'd moved closer. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, looked again. Now he was at the edge of the lot. By the 3rd blink, he stood directly beneath my window, motionless, head cocked at that same unnatural angle. My throat went dry. I stepped back, closing the curtain halfway. The ceiling creaked again, faster this time, as if someone were pacing frantically right above. I picked up the phone to call the front desk, but when I pressed the receiver to my ear, I heard nothing but static. I don't know how long I sat on the bed, clutching that useless phone, listening to the footsteps above. The rain had slowed, replaced by a rhythmic tapping somewhere. Maybe a loose gutter, maybe something else. Then the hallway lights outside started to dim, one by one. I saw it through the gap under the door, each bulb buzzing out closer and closer. When the one outside my room flickered, I froze. I heard something sliding against the wood, fingertips dragging across the doorframe. Then a whisper. Low, slow, deliberate. "Let me in." My own voice. It wasn't perfect, but it was close enough to make my skin crawl. "Let me in," it said again, softer this time, almost pleading. I pressed my back to the wall, heart pounding so loud I could barely think. I didn't dare speak or move. The doorknob rattled once, twice, then stopped. I waited. Eventually, the light under the door went dark. When I finally gathered the courage to open it, the hallway was empty. All lights out except one at the far end, buzzing faintly. But the carpet outside my door was covered in dust, and in that dust were footprints, bare long leading away from my door toward the stairs. I went straight to the front desk. Tom looked startled when he saw me. "Someone's in the room above me," I said, breathing hard, "and someone was outside my door." He went pale. "There's no one up there, sir. Second floor east wing's been closed for years. Water damage." I stared at him. "Then who—" He cut me off, fumbling for the phone. "Stay here. I'll call the sheriff." As he dialed, I glanced at the wall behind him. A row of framed photos showing the motel's construction, its opening day, old staff portraits. The last one caught my eye. A tall man standing beside the sign, head slightly tilted. The caption read, "Miller's Motor Lodge, 1963. Owner, Thomas Miller." He looked exactly like the figure I'd seen outside. I turned toward the clerk. "Tom," I said slowly, "that picture—" But when he looked up, his eyes were wide. "Sir," he said quietly, "you should go back to your room and lock the door. The sheriff's on his way." He handed me my key again, though I never remembered setting it down. I don't remember walking back upstairs. I just remember the silence. When the police finally arrived, everything felt hazy, like I was underwater. They found room 9 locked from the inside. I'd been sitting on the bed staring at the door, holding my phone like it was a lifeline. The sheriff kicked the door in. The room was empty except for me. Tom was gone. They searched the motel from top to bottom. Every room upstairs was covered in dust, except one. The floor above mine had clear footprints leading from the window to the stairwell. The officer asked if I'd been outside. I told him no. He looked at me like he didn't believe me, then said quietly, "You should get some rest. Happens on long drives. Tricks of the light. Exhaustion." Maybe he was right. Maybe I'd imagined it all. But when I got to my car, there were 2 things on the passenger seat that hadn't been there before: my room key and a folded note. It read, in shaky handwriting, "Checkout complete. Room ready for next guest." Exhaustion blurs more than just your eyes. It blurs judgment, memory, even reality. On lonely roads and sleepless nights, the mind fills quiet spaces with echoes of fear. Don't ignore your limits. Fatigue can make ghosts where none exist, and sometimes it's not the road that's haunted, but the mind that travels it. People told me nothing good happens after midnight. I used to laugh that off, mostly because I didn't have a choice. Bills didn't care what time the clock struck. I was 23, studying criminal justice at the community college in Yuma, scraping by on gas station sandwiches and night classes, when I saw the flyer. Overnight front desk clerk needed. Crossroads Inn. Must be reliable. Self-sufficient. 17. Erie. I thought I'd hit the jackpot. The motel was 15 miles outside town, sitting lonely between the desert and an old 2-lane highway, where the asphalt shimmered like liquid during the day. At night, it was black glass, endless, reflecting nothing. My first night on the job, the manager, Frank, gave me a set of brass keys and a binder of rules that looked older than I was. No parties, no hourly guests, and keep the lights on in the lobby no matter what, he said. I joked, "Afraid of ghosts?" He didn't smile. "Power went out once back in 14, things got weird. We just keep 'em on now." I laughed it off, signed the papers, and figured he was just one of those desert eccentrics who'd spent too long breathing hot dust. By midnight, the motel was silent except for the hum of the soda machine and the old wall clock ticking behind me. I set up my textbooks, poured some gas station coffee, and told myself this was the best job I'd ever had. Around 2 a.m., A wind started to blow. You can hear it in the desert. Not just the sound, but the movement itself, like a living thing pushing against the glass. I was rereading my notes on criminal procedure when the chime above the door went off. Ding, the sensor that signals someone's entering. I looked up. No one. The doors were closed. Probably a bug, I thought. The sensor was ancient. I reset it. 10 minutes later, I heard gravel crunching outside. A black SUV pulled into the lot and parked under the broken floodlight. Headlights still on. I waited, watching through the glass. Nobody got out. 5 minutes passed. 10. Then the lights flicked off. The car just sat there, black windows staring back at me. That's when the door sensor chimed again. Ding. Then again. Ding. As if someone was pacing in and out. Invisible. Restless. I leaned over the counter and peered through the glass doors. The night was dead silent. The SUV hadn't moved. "Hello?" I called. "We're open if you need a room." My voice sounded small in the wide emptiness. No response. I told myself to relax. Desert nights play tricks. Sound bounces weirdly. Air moves like it has its own will. I turned to the security monitors. 8 screens, each showing a different angle of the motel, the parking lot, hallways, lobby, laundry room, vending machine alcove. Every screen was empty. I exhaled. Maybe I was just tired. Then the lobby camera glitched. Static across the image. When it cleared, I froze. The lobby, my lobby, was full of people. Dozens of them, standing silently. Some in coats, some barefoot, all facing the desk. I turned around. Empty. I looked back at the screen. They were still there, unmoving. A crowd of quiet shadows in the place where I stood. The hum of the refrigerator deepened, the air conditioner clicked off, and the silence became absolute. Then, one by one, the monitors began to flicker. The figures started moving, not toward the exit, but down the hallway, turning corners, heading toward the front desk. "Frank," I muttered, grabbing the landline. "Frank, you better pick up, man." The line clicked once, dead air. Then a voice came on. "Dispatch," it said. "Yuma County Emergency Services." "Oh, thank God," I breathed. "Listen, my name's Miguel Alvarez. I'm at the Crossroads Inn. Something weird's happening here." The dispatcher interrupted. "We've already taken your statement, Miguel." I blinked. "What?" "Last year," she said gently. "About the shooting." I couldn't speak. "There's no need to call again." The line went dead. Behind me, the automatic door slid open with a hiss. Cold air rushed in. Sharp, metallic, smelling like old pennies in desert rain. And on the monitor, the crowd had reached the lobby. I backed away from the counter, heart slamming in my chest. "Frank," I called again, louder this time. "This isn't funny." No answer. The figures on the screens began stepping closer, their faces hazy, details smearing like wet paint. But one figure stood out, clearer than the rest. He wore a dark uniform, mine. Same hair, same tired expression. He was standing where I stood now, staring directly into the security camera. On instinct, I looked up at the lens above me. Nothing. Then I looked back at the screen and saw myself smile. "Welcome to the night shift," the figure on the screen said. The sound came not from the speakers, but from behind me. I turned. He was there. Same height, same face, same uniform. Except his shirt was darker around the collar, like it had soaked up something. Blood, maybe. "I'm dreaming," I whispered. He tilted his head. "You always say that." He walked closer, and with each step the air thickened, colder. I felt pressure in my ears, the way you do in an airplane. "Who are you?" I demanded. "You know," he said. "We've been here before." I stumbled back against the counter. My hand brushed something cold, a brass key, the kind Frank used. It was labeled, "Room." "There's no room 0, I said aloud. "There is now." He smiled wider, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. The power went out. The emergency lights flickered red. The motel was silent except for the wind pressing against the windows. I grabbed a flashlight from behind the desk and bolted down the hallway. The walls seemed to stretch longer than I remembered. Every door number flickered, 101, 102, 103. Then, between them, a door that hadn't been there before. Room 0. I hesitated. Then the knob turned by itself. The door creaked open, revealing a small, dark room with a single chair in the center. On the wall hung a framed newspaper clipping. Crossroads Inn shooting leaves 1 dead, 2023. My breath caught. The article showed a grainy photo of me, younger, same uniform, terrified, being led away by police. I read the first line. Miguel Alvarez, 22, was found at the scene after reportedly shooting an armed intruder during an overnight shift gone wrong. I stumbled back, flashlight shaking. The room's air thickened. Behind me, the voice, my voice, whispered, "You said you'd never come back." I turned, and he was standing in the doorway again, my double. "Why am I here?" I asked, voice cracking. He stepped closer. "Because you never left." The next moments blurred. I remember backing into the wall, the red light flickering, the sound of wind and static blending into one endless hum. He walked toward the desk, sat down, and started flipping through the guest log like he'd done it 100 times. "Who are all those people?" I asked. He didn't look up. "Guests. Same as you. They come in, they check out, they forget." I didn't check out. "No," he said softly. "You called for help. They said they'd already taken your statement. Remember?" I remembered the sound of gunfire, a figure bursting through the doors last year. The flash, the fear, the moment I fired. And then nothing. He looked up, eyes flat and knowing. "Welcome back, Miguel." He slid a pen toward me. "Sign in." My hand trembled as I took it. The book was filled with identical signatures. My name, written over and over. As I pressed the pen to the page, the red light faded to gray. The walls smoothed into mist. When I looked up, I was behind the desk again, alone. The monitors hummed quietly, showing an empty lobby. Outside, the black SUV sat in the same spot, headlights off. I sighed, straightened my uniform, and waited for the next guest. You can't outrun the moments you refuse to face. The Crossroads Inn is a mirror, not a motel, a place where guilt checks in and never leaves. Miguel's story reminds us that denial doesn't erase what we've done. It only traps us in the endless loop of our own unfinished business. Until we face the truth, even the darkest part of it, we'll keep living the same night, waiting for morning that never comes.